Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the Salescast Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we are on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Darrell Amy.
Darrell here, and I'm excited to share with you one of the most innovative tools we've come across in a long time. Our partners at Why Institute have developed an amazing platform that helps people discover their why operating system. It's truly amazing. In 10 minutes or less, you can know why you do what you do, how you bring your why to life, and what people can count on from you. It's truly the first step in self-awareness. If you're a coach or a sales leader who believes in helping your people understand who they are so they can be the best version of themselves, you've got to check this out. All you need to do is go to whyinstitute.com and look for the Why certification page. We'll put the link in the show notes. When you reach out to the Why Institute, let them know you heard about it here on Selling from the Heart, and you'll be on your way to helping your team discover what drives them. Hello and welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
We have all kinds of things going on. I love podcasting. I've been looking forward to this one for quite some time.
We got Bernadette McClelland in the house, and you know it's going to be awesome. So get ready for a fantastic conversation. We're so excited that you're here, and we're so excited about the movement around Selling from the Heart. And I also want to add something else I'm excited about, Larry, and we've been talking about it. That's the re-release of the Selling from the Heart book. You got picked up by a New York publisher. The movement continues to grow.
No, it sure does. It's quite an honor. Who would have thought? Who would have thought all this would have happened 6 years ago? Here we start the podcast. The book came out. And this is why I'm super jazzed, because Bernadette's near and dear to me, and we'll peel this one back. But wow, what a ride this has been.
It is so exciting. And so if you're listening to this during the launch period, it's launching on August 15th on our good friends at barnesandnoble.com. And if you pre-order the book right now, you can get a whole bevy. Is that a word? Bevy. You can get a ton of.
Even if it isn't, you just made it up. So it's all good.
It's great. Larry, you've put together over $250 of free bonus items, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. And I'm so excited because we're now looking at this going, how do we get enough momentum in the pre-launch to not only get it in the .com, but also get it on the shelves? And we get enough pre-orders in motion. This Selling from the Heart movement continues to grow. And if you're listening in, we want to ask you to go to barnesandnoble.com, grab a copy of the book, then head on over to sellingfromtheheart.net. We got a ton of special thank yous for you for pre-ordering the book. Larry, this is an exciting time right now.
You're excited? I'm excited. This is get Bernadette on. Let's get this thing going.
Well, and Bernadette McClelland is no stranger to Selling from the Heart. If you've been a long time listener, you know Bernadette. She is a good friend, a like-hearted sales professional and coach. She is now tapping into the stories behind the stories to help businesses become the number one pick and dominate their market. Bernadette has landed million-dollar deals. She's influenced the U.S. government to recognize her in the top 1% of sales leaders globally. Tony Robbins refers to her as a superstar. Harvard ratified her as one of their NBA sales coaches, and the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center has been a beta test for her IP. And Brian Tracy has endorsed 2 of her books on sales leadership. We could go on and on, but Bernadette McClelland, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome back to Selling from the Heart. We absolutely love you.
Oh my God, it's so good to be here. And I love your green room, guys.
Isn't it?
You know how to look after.
That's right.
It's
We told you we spared no expense.
You were something missing. I'm hearing you talking about a bevy of bonuses, and I'm like, where's my bevy?
Hey, Bernadette, not that kind of bevy.
Oh, got it. Well, hey guys, good to be back.
This is going to be so much fun. And I'm so excited to talk about stories and all of these new things you've been working on. But as we get started, Bernadette, you know the question that every guest on the Selling from the Heart podcast answers, and that is, what does it mean to you to sell from the heart?
Well, it means to care. It means to enjoy what you do and to do the best that you can do.
Yeah. And I'm so glad, hey, Bernadette, that you brought up care because, I'm just on this big mission just to bring care and compassion and how we connect back to the sales profession that I know all of us love. But I'm just as we get started, we're going to have a great conversation. I just want to peel back care for just a moment, if we can, and I'm going to flip this around because I'd just be curious your thoughts, is what do you think prevents, or what are the stumbling blocks around a lot of people in sales not bringing care to the forefront? I'm just curious your thoughts on this. What do you think might be preventing them from doing it? I think they care, but what they care about might be different than what their clients or their future clients care about.
Okay. So I think that everybody who is in a sales role cares. I think they care about different things, just like each of us.
Sure.
Yeah. And we care about different things. It could be caring about the way that you prepare for a call. It could be caring about the fact that you're going to deliver on what you say that you're going to deliver on. It could be that you care enough about your family to go out there and make the prospecting calls to bring the money in. So care is, I guess, it's just one of those words, isn't it? When I answered your question, for me, it's caring about what I do and making sure that I put in everything that I need to package in or put in or present or show up with, that's going to be the best for the person that I'm going to be speaking to.
Yeah, I think that, this whole idea about caring is a really great bridge actually to our topic today, because everybody has a story, and stories have been animating the work that you've been doing recently. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, Bernadette. And just to kick this off, why do you think story is so important to the world of the sales profession?
Okay, so story is our oldest form of communication. We've all heard that. We all know that. Last weekend, my husband and I took a trip down to Mesa Verde, which is a beautiful national park. And we walked along the trail that has been there for thousands of years. And what we saw was the petroglyphs. And so when you see a story that is on stone that has been there for thousands of years, that's our earliest form of communication. And so those petroglyphs depicted a number of different things. So if we consider that as human beings, we are visual processing, our brains process things visually. 83% of our processing power from our brain is visual. And so, auditory is another way. So we tell stories, but it's the major part of storytelling, and this is different to story selling, which is my lane. So storytelling is able to bypass the prefrontal cortex, which is our rational processing part of the brain, and goes straight through to the emotional part. So when you consider that, we hear that mantra, we buy an emotion, but we back it up with logic. That's where that comes in. But the brain does need a little bit of logic before the emotion. It needs a frame. It needs context. And that, just launching into a story for the sake of telling a story is pointless. It's got to have a point to start with, but it's also got to be framed so that your buyer or anybody listening has context. And when you can give a story context first, that takes it from the rational part of the brain to the emotional part, and that's where the decision is really made.
Oh, this is so good, and I'm going to enjoy this conversation. And you brought up something around story selling.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about storytelling, and I know your lane now is story selling. Unpack this for us, and this the theory behind it, and so forth, because this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So when we talk about storytelling in business, so I'm talking about in business, we understand that the stories that we tell our buyers will include, our connection story. It could be our signature story, our origin story, a success story, a number of different stories. So stories have a purpose. I'm not talking about those. Yes, I do, and yes, I can. But in story selling, it's quite a unique model. And I call it my story selling philosophy. It's the story selling framework. And it consists of, if you were to draw a Venn diagram, so, people listening and watching, and draw my whiteboard, if I had prepared this better, I would wheel
come on, Bernadette.
I would wheel it across. Oh, damn it.
We got this. So 3 interconnected circles.
There you go.
3 interconnected, a Venn diagram. So if we consider for a moment what most businesses expect their salespeople to do, they expect their salespeople to be able to connect with the right level of buyer. Rather than just going in at the comfort level of user or operations, but how do we get the right level of connection? When you do get to the right level of connection, you need to have the right depth of communication, of conversation rather. And so when you can get to the right level of connection and your conversations are the right depth, then your conversions will accelerate. So that's not rocket science, okay? So that's connection, conversation, and conversion. But where the magic happens is at the intersections. So the first intersection is they are the internal stories. They are the stories you tell yourself about the buyer. The external stories, the second intersection, are the stories you tell your buyer. And the third intersection are what I call the essential stories, and they are the stories you must elicit from your buyer. And they are the stories that are so often missed. So that's the story selling model, if you like. Where it differs is in the external stories. I talked a minute ago about the stories that we tell our buyers, which are connection stories or they are success stories. I'm not bringing those stories into the stories you tell your buyer. I'm actually taking the conversation to a deeper level by bringing in mental models. So if you go back to what I said before, 83% of our processing is visual. And yet we sit opposite our buyers and all we do is tell. And so if we can be on the same side of the table as our buyer and truly co-create, truly collaborate, and sit there with a pen, with a napkin, with a whiteboard marker, with a whiteboard, and be able to elicit those essential stories and then be able to synthesize the ideas and put it into a mental model, you actually now draw your buyer in, literally and figuratively, and you get buy-in. So that's my differentiator. That's what makes story selling so unique. So yes, we do the success story and the origin story and all of that, but I take it to a totally different depth. And if you consider that what our buyers are wanting today, 71% of them are saying salespeople are not bringing any value to the table. And the only way that we can really bring value to the table is in a dialogue. It's not a white paper, it's not a white paper anymore. That used to be, but now our buyers are just, we are all evolved. We've all evolved so much, and we need to evolve our sales conversations, not just rely on the same old methodologies that I'm not knocking those at all, because they are a baseline, but we need to augment those. We need to bring another layer on top of those. And so story selling does that. And so the three stories within the external story component of the Venn diagram circle is all about a progression framework, which is guiding our buyer through change. And so that's like a ladder. It's like a value ladder. And, we all love to measure ourselves against some form of growth or progression. That will always demonstrate, or it will always give you or help somebody with a reason why change should happen. So a progression model or a progression story in this case, will actually help your buyer understand where they are on a growth scale or where they are on a progression path. And that's when they start to say, yeah, okay, I can see why I need to change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is super, super cool. And I love this concept of going back to the Venn diagram. So I still see the mental Venn diagram. I know all of our listeners see that. There's these three stories, the stories you tell yourself. And I want to unpack that for a minute, because I know we do a lot of inside work. We challenge people to do a lot of inside work here at Selling from the Heart. Stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
What's an example? How does this look? Like, what's an example of a storyline that's going on inside someone's head? Maybe one that's helpful and maybe one that is not so helpful.
So in that particular circle, for want of a simplistic word, there are three stories that I unpack, and in great depth. And those three stories, and I mean, this comes from, I know you mentioned in the intro, my association with Anthony Robbins. So being his coach for Asia Pacific for a number of years, working with so many different businesses, doesn't matter whether they're CEOs or they're brand new people or just people at home. The biggest challenges, the biggest chokeholds I see, and also when working with corporates as well, it's across the board. It really, the verticals don't make a difference because we're all human. And so the three key categories where I see sabotage happening, where I see struggles happening, is across identity is one. Authority is another, and money is the third. And so I guess the outcomes for each one of those stories is really being enough is identity. It is demonstrating expertise, which is authority, and it is expressing value. And so they are the internal stories that that we all of us, by the way, we cross those three paths daily. And so how that shows up in a sales situation, a sales environment, you have people who are in environments where they're having to do tasks that perhaps are not congruent with how they see themselves. And so identity is a really key part. Authority is how salespeople view people in authority. And, all of us, whether it's school teachers, doctors, cops, police, CEO on the door. And it doesn't matter whether that CEO or that decision maker is younger than you or not. there is still this aversion to authority. And then money, of course, is the third one. And of course, that is a no-brainer. We understand what that means. So many of us have grown up in environments where money, it's just such an emotional trigger for so many of us. And we need to kind of get past that and to start rethinking money. So those are the three, I guess, the story modes within the internal story category.
I'm just curious. And as I'm sitting here listening and we go back to the identity part of this, and I'd just be curious your thoughts, is this, and this is what I believe, and this is how I've been internalizing what you're saying is, do you feel this is why some salespeople get caught in having conversations with lower level and mid-level management because how they view a C-level executive? They may go, I may not be worthy of having this conversation, but it's a whole lot easier to have a conversation with somebody at a lower level or mid-level. Am I interpreting some of this correctly, or did I miss the mark?
Yeah, no. You definitely, that's how it plays out. So that's how it manifests. But we need to understand that, along with all of that, there are beliefs around authority, and they're generational. They are conditional. It's the same as money as well. And so they don't see themselves, it's almost not as much as worthy, but there's this whole, I was going to say use the word fear, but it kind of does. Like, picture, for example, you're driving your car and you're going down the freeway and wind's in your hair and you've got the music going and all the rest of that's happening, and you see way in your rear vision mirror, you hear it and you see the lights. It's a cop. Well, what do? You know, we panic, we pump the brakes, we kind of like, and you know you've done nothing wrong, but still your heart's beating, 10 miles to the gallon or whatever you call it. Doesn't? I don't know. What's that word? Anyway, and that cop just goes straight past, So that is in so many people. And it's this whole thing also where it falls into, and there's some studies that have been done that show it's an obedience study where people will actually obey that person in authority, even if they're not believing it, because of this fear of doing the wrong thing, getting into trouble. What if I stuff up? All that kind of stuff. So studies have been done around it. Dan Stein, another guy, I think that's his name, I can't remember, is also done a study. And from a fear of authority, there's never 25% of people have this fear of authority. So you spread that across the sales environment. And now you start to see, well, okay, why, bring someone in, teach my salespeople how to close a deal, help them overcome objections. Whoa, you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping it sticks. I got that one right.
You got that one right, Bernadette.
So, yeah, all of this, it's fascinating. So that's what I unpack as and of course, the persona for the internal stories is the story catcher. And so we need to catch those stories that we're telling ourselves, and we need to kind of do something about it. So story sits in with that.
Well,
I love this.
I'll raise my hand really quick. I'm a great internal storyteller, Bernadette. You know that, but I am a great internal storyteller. I just got to catch myself with these stories. I just got to catch myself with them. But this is great stuff.
Well, speaking of storytelling, we actually have a special feature right here in the middle of the show with our friend, Michael Morris, who's going to answer the question, what it means to him to sell from the heart. This is a fascinating conversation. We're going to continue it here in just a few moments after a word from our sponsor and after hearing from Michael about what it means to him to sell from the heart.
Great news. The Selling from the Heart book has been picked up by a New York publishing house and is now on the Barnes & Noble website. To help fuel the growth in our movement of authenticity, it'd be awesome to get the book not just on the website, but also on the shelves of Barnes & Noble stores. To do this, we need to demonstrate how popular this book is by pre-ordering as many copies as possible. To thank you for helping me with this huge goal, when you pre-order the book on barnesandnoble.com, I will say thank you with over $250 in special bonus items. To get started, please pre-order Selling from the Heart on the barnesandnoble.com website. Then go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book to learn more about how to get your special bonus items. Thank you for your support as we continue to build this movement of authenticity inside the sales profession.
Hey, and good afternoon. I'm Michael Morris, and I'm a sales professional in Charlotte, North Carolina. So selling from the heart for me is something that as a sales professional, you have to care about your clients. You have to be very real and introspective so that you're putting yourself in the shoes of your clients and you're understanding what they're going through with the end goal of building those long-lasting and trusting relationships. Consistency, authenticity, and dedication to your clients is what selling from the heart represents to me. Thank you.
Love that, Michael. And that's so in line with our conversation today. By the way, if you want to submit a video, we'd love to hear from you. We love hearing from our audience. Just text the word video to 21,000 and we'll give you instructions on how to answer the question, what it means to you to sell from the heart, so you could be featured on a future episode. I think what Michael was talking about there was right in line of entering into the concept of understanding the story from the customer's perspective. And I thought it was really interesting, the point that you brought up earlier, and I want to unpack this for just a moment. These essential stories that we need to hear the story. We tell a lot of stories as salespeople. I'm really interested by this third part of the Venn diagram where we go in and we actually listen for stories and solicit stories from our prospects and clients. What does that look like? That's fascinating to me, Bernadette.
So once again, there's 3 little stories for that circle.
Awesome. I love it. This is symmetrical. It makes my heart happy.
Like once again, this whole philosophy is really based on kind of like a sales Swiss Army knife. Mm-hmm. So the tools that are provided, or the baseline, is very much based on psychology. It's based on story. It's based on mental models, as I mentioned before, and it's also based around coaching. So with me having gone through and got all these bits of paper over the years for coaching that nobody's ever wanted to look at, it's like the coach approach is one of my approaches in the essential stories. So it's like, what is the coach approach? I believe, and I have said this for eons, is that I believe salespeople need to learn to become coaches, not just do sales training on the same old. So when you have a coach approach, you leave yourself at the door. And you focus in entirely on providing a platform for your buyer to collaboratively come up part of the way with your help as the mentor, come up with their own answers by guiding them. And so how the 3 stories in the essential story, the 3 story modes, are expansion. And that is, how do you build flexibility into your conversation? Because if you are going to speak to a CEO, they need to be spoken to in a totally different way than somebody who is at the user level. And how you do that is by being able to take a conversation to a contextual level, be able to take a concept and build a concept out sideways. And it's also the ability to be able to get granular and get deep into a content level. So that's very much, the expansion story mode. The second of the 3 stories is perspective. And how can you identify criteria? So we're talking about buying, we're talking about selling. How can you identify not just the logical buying criteria, but the emotional buying criteria of your buyer? And so once again, using the coach approach, this is it's very question-centric, but it is not your normal sales questions. It's really leaning into the coach approach. And finally, it's decision, and that's all about landing the business. And that is not your typical, who else apart from you is responsible for the decision, or when will the decision be made? I'm not negating those, because we do need to ask those questions, but it's how do you understand from a neuro-linguistic perspective what is really going on as to your buyer's decision-making process from a real neurological perspective. Like, do they make decisions based on things in the past or the future? How do they know if they've made a really good decision? So there's all of that. So I unpack those three stories in the essential story modes.
Love it. This is fascinating. I'm sitting here listening and I'm going, how would this play out in real world situation? I'm like going, just imagine for a moment, you're an executive and Bernadette's the sales professional and she's sharing this information. Is all of a sudden, this is the first thing that just flashes through my head is that executive goes, hey, where have you been all my life? Well, because I haven't had conversations like this. I believe it's rare that they have conversations like this.
Look, I've really, unpacked some thought leadership. Like I've really given the model some depth and some thought. And from a personal perspective, it's the perfect storm for me because it brings in my personal leadership stuff through coaching. Mm-hmm. It brings in my thought leadership stuff because I've hung out in the world of thought leadership, Thought Leaders Global with Matt Church over in Australia, the thought leadership community. And that is, really leaning into making the complex simple for people. And so I've kind of hooked myself on there to the wagon of mental models. And of course, sales leadership with all my experience in corporate and small business and all the rest of it. So for me, it's at the intersection of those three leadership categories. But the interesting thing is, though, this is a game changer. And I know it's a game changer because I use it myself anyway. And so the interesting thing is how many people will be prepared to do the work.
Yep.
And it comes back to that because so many people will just default back to the wonderful methodologies of SPIN and Challenger and whatever those methodologies are. I grew up on all of those in corporate, so we need them. They're a great baseline. But as I mentioned, how are you going to get a leader or a salesperson to sit down, and this is where, I help because it's almost like the cooking shows. We'll work together, we'll create a mental model. So I'm talking with you before about the progression one, which is always a why change must happen. The what must happen. And once again, this is where collaboration and co-creation comes in. You sit with your buyer and you do a 2x2 matrix. That is always a what. So for you to be able to sit there and say, you know what, top right-hand quadrant, what's it look like? What are your parameters? Let's kind of work this out together. So what have we got to do to get those two up to the top right quadrant? So we will work on that. And then, of course, you get buy-in. Okay, yeah, Bernadette, that's what needs to happen. How? And then we come to a then. And the then is always a how. And so if we can do what the cooking shows do and pre-cook, we'll kind of work on it in the background. We know our target market well enough. We know how to go to the market. We know what questions now that we've got to ask. We create our own models. They become a little library for our business because every business is going to be different. And we know what to roll out in a conversation. And so that part of the work has got to be done. But like anything, it's a boundary condition. People are going to resist it because it's change. It's something new. But the ones that embrace it, watch what happens. You'll win just about every deal because you've got emotional and logical buy-in.
I love it. This is so cool. It's always so fun having a conversation with Bernadette because you know that you're going to be like, wow, I never thought of it that way. This is brilliant. I really, really have enjoyed this. Bernadette, how can people get more story selling, stories behind the stories? Bernadette McClelland, all of the above. How can we dive deeper into this?
Okay, so connect with me on LinkedIn naturally, but also Shift and Disrupt is the name of my book. That's the URL. If you want to jump on the book site, there'll be resources and whatnot that will be attached to that. Shift and Disrupt. Stop selling widgets. Start selling wisdom.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. So good, Bernadette. We're excited. And I know that we're going to have you back again soon to keep this conversation going because this is just so spot on. And just from the bottom of our heart here at Selling from the Heart, we're cheering you on. We appreciate you being a champion for authenticity.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right.
I love it. Always a pleasure.
I love Bernadette. Oh, man.
Challenging. There's so much
I just felt I went to
depth.
School. I just went to school for half an hour.
And the overall perspective that she brought around, I think one of the biggest issues right now, and I know I want to unpack this with Bernadette in a deeper conversation, but people struggle to make decisions. And it's our role as sales professionals to help them make good decisions. And it goes beyond just the basic stuff we learned along the way. It goes into truly, I like that coaching perspective. And there's so much depth here. But I want to circle back to the beginning of this whole thing. And that's, what's your story? What stories are you telling yourself? The inner work is so critical when we come into this. And Larry, I know that you've been a champion, and we've been champions here at Selling from the Heart about doing the inner work, because this is so critical that we show up having dove deep inside ourselves, and the categories Bernadette introduced here today about the stories we tell ourselves, that's going to require even some more deeper dives inside.
No, so true. And I'm just a big believer that really nothing happens in sales unless we can artfully start a conversation. And it's how we start these. And it's just reprogramming how we've been doing this. And Bernadette alluded to it, right? We talk about objection handling and we talk about closing techniques and things like that. But here's the biggest question. How are your salespeople opening up business conversations with executives and key decision makers?
It's beautiful. This is so good. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's listening in, and not only listening, but liking, sharing, and commenting on the podcast. This is a movement of authenticity right here in the sales profession. It's gotten noticed by a New York publisher. Larry, once again, congratulations. Thank you to everybody going to Barnes & Noble. Go grab your pre-order at Barnes & Noble. And then when you do, head over to sellingfromtheheart.net and get your bevy of bonus items. So there we go.
It's not that kind of bevy.
Not that kind of bevy. Hey, this is going to be a lot of fun. We've got great guests lined up all summer long. You want to stay fired up. You want to stay engaged throughout the summer. Make sure to like or subscribe to Selling from the Heart on the platform on which you listen. And until next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust, dive into story, and most of all, sell from the heart.